Do you remember what Trump did at the State of the Union? He walked Democrats right into a trap, and they didn't even see it coming until it was too late.
If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
Now he's doing the same thing with the modern British financial empire and their enforcement arm, namely NATO.
But I was surprised to see that NATO, while they agreed that it was a very important thing to do, they agree fully. Nobody said, oh, you shouldn't do it. I think NATO's making a very foolish mistake. And I've long said that, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test, because we don't need them, but they should have been there.
Notice how he calls this a great test. He followed up on Truth Social, concluding he wasn't surprised by NATO's refusal to defend ships in the Strait of Hormuz, since we spent billions defending them with absolutely no return to us. The media is telling you that Trump is throwing a tantrum because our European allies won't help protect the strait, that he's mad about oil prices. They're all wrong. President Trump has been preparing to leave NATO for months. The allies' refusal to back him on Iran didn't cause his break with NATO. It confirmed his idea about their stupid games. I'm Barbara Boyd. I've spent decades tracking the British financial empire's imperial wars in the Middle East and NATO's role as their enforcement arm across all of Eurasia. Today, I'm going to first cover Trump dumping NATO, a huge story. Then how Iran illustrates the battle between Trump's American system economics and the British free trade looters. And finally, how the globalists are trying to split MAGA through their oldest weapon, religious warfare. But first, please like and share this video. It increases our reach on YouTube. The end of NATO didn't begin last week. It began in February 2025 at the Munich Security Conference, the premier annual gathering of the NATO alliance. Vice President J.D. Vance walked into that room and told Europe's assembled leadership that Europe wasn't being threatened from without, it was being destroyed from within by totalitarian censorship, thought crime prosecutions, open borders, and election rigging.
We also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense. The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
The room was astounded, but Vance wasn't wrong, and the Trump administration was serving notice on NATO. Here's where Iran enters this picture. Under Biden, the Europeans, France, Germany, and the UK, had taken the lead on the Iran nuclear file under Biden's Iran envoy, Robert Mueller. Now, Mueller came under investigation for mishandling classified documents and suspected recruitment by Iranian intelligence. So those talks went nowhere while Iran built its arsenal. In March 2025, Donald Trump wrote to Ayatollah Khamenei seeking renewed nuclear negotiations with a 60-day deadline. When that deadline expired, he launched Operation Midnight Hammer, bombing Iran's nuclear facilities. After initial waffling, the UK, Germany, and France finally fell in line, supporting the strike and initiating sweeping sanctions against Iran. But in their own backyard, the Europeans were playing a double game, doing everything in their power to sabotage Trump's settlement of the Russia-Ukraine war, a war killing thousands every week. And now, their abject refusal to defend oil and gas shipments through the Gulf, including gas due for their own countries, has solved the testing the president has been doing of them. They have failed. They have shown their true faces. Here's President Trump yesterday on leaving NATO.
Disappointed in NATO that we spend trillions of dollars on NATO. Think of it, trillions over the years, many trillions of dollars. It's one of the reasons we have deficits and we help other countries. And when they don't help us, I mean, it's certainly something that we should think about. I don't need Congress for that decision. As you probably know, I can make that decision myself. I'd work with some very smart people. And I'd always deal with Congress anyway, but I don't need Congress for that decision. But, you know, when you say rethink, I have nothing currently in mind, but I will say that I'm not exactly thrilled when we help them with Ukraine.
Trump is seriously thinking about dumping the Praetorian Guard of the globalist financial empire, and he doesn't need Congress to do it. He's clearly thought about it. The media won't cover that astounding and revolutionary statement. But that's our mission here at Promethean Action, to mine for you the events which matter. Subscribe to our free newsletter and you'll be in the president's mental space, not that of our nation's enemies. To understand what Trump is actually doing, you have to read what his administration has actually written. The national security strategy came out in December. The defense strategy followed in January. Both delivered huge bad news for the post-war globalist financial order. He wants out of Europe. He's prioritizing the Western Hemisphere, our own country, and trade with the Pacific. Here's what the national security strategy says explicitly about the Middle East. As this administration rescinds or eases restrictive energy policies and American energy production wraps up, America's historical reason for focusing on the Middle East will recede. Instead, the region will increasingly become a source of destination of international investment in industries well beyond oil and gas, including nuclear energy, AI, and defense technologies. Read that again. The intent is to get out of the Middle East militarily and open a new chapter of American-led economic development. And it's not just words. The Gulf states have already committed $17 trillion in investments into the American economy. So why bomb Iran? Because Iran's constant proxy warfare creates perpetual regional instability. And that instability keeps oil prices volatile and high. That volatility is a direct threat to Trump's economic revolution at home. That revolution is built on one major foundation: cheap, reliable energy. Drill, baby, drill isn't a slogan. It's the load-bearing wall of everything Trump is building for the American working class. And it's not just Iran standing in the way. Oil prices are not set in Riyadh or Houston. They're set through London's spot and commodity markets. And those markets profit from exactly the instability Iran provides. The major oil companies have told Trump repeatedly they're not interested in drill, baby, drill. Excess supply drives down prices and endangers their preference for shareholder value, share buybacks. They would rather manage scarcity than flood the market with cheap American energy. And then there's the ideological layer in Europe. The UK, Canada, and Europe remain committed to the green religion, willing to punish their own citizens with crushing energy prices in service of that ideology. Cheap American energy isn't just an economic competitor to them, it's a theological threat. So when you see NATO allies refusing to back Trump on Iran, this isn't a diplomatic spat among friends. This is the enforcement arm of the British financial empire fighting for its own survival. While all this plays out on the world stage, the globalists are running a very old play right here at home. I lived through 1968. The assassinations of Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King didn't just grieve the country, it traumatized it. They broke millions of people's willingness to fight, to believe political action could change anything. What followed was the counterculture. Remember that? Turn on, tune in, drop out. Not a whole lot of people stayed in the fight. I watched a similar but different dynamic unfold in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination on September 10th, 2025, just 6 months ago. In that traumatized, suggestible atmosphere, two separate internet warfare operations ignited, and I don't believe either is coincidental. The first told MAGA that Trump is controlled by Netanyahu, by an all-powerful Israeli lobby, by a foreign power. The implication? Your movement has been betrayed. Never mind that Trump has been calling for military action against Iran since 2011 and earlier, before he was even a candidate. The second ran the opposite current, that the administration is riddled with secret Israel haters, Muslim sympathizers, anti-war saboteurs. Two currents, opposite directions. Same result. Fracture the coalition that delivered Trump's overwhelming November victory ahead of the midterms. MAGA in 2024 was an interfaith movement. The Muslim vote in Michigan was decisive. Arab Americans, Hindu Americans, evangelical Christians, Jews, traditional Catholics, all under one banner. Religious warfare has been the global empire's weapon of choice for permanent war in the Middle East for decades. And they're very good at it, and they're doing it here now. In addition to the president, their primary targets are Vice President Vance and DNI Tulsi Gabbard, both of whom built political careers on opposition to regime change wars. Both are essential right now for their missions aimed at dismantling the deep state. Here's Vance at the Fraud Task Force signing ceremony when a reporter tried to drive exactly that wedge between him and the president that we're talking about.
I know what you're trying to do, Phil. You're trying to drive a wedge between members of the administration, between me and the president. What the president said consistently, going back to 2015, and I agreed with him, is that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon.
And Tulsi? Yesterday, one of her top deputies, Joe Kent, the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, resigned, claiming Iran posed no imminent threat and the war was started due to Israeli lobby pressure. That statement is word for word the globalist psychological warfare narrative. It came from inside the building. Here's Gabbard's response. Donald Trump was overwhelmingly elected by the American people to be our president and commander-in-chief. After carefully reviewing all the information before him, President Trump concluded that the terrorist Islamist regime in Iran posed an imminent threat, and he took action based on that conclusion. Neither one of them took the bait, and the polling shows MAGA supports the war. The president's base gets it. But you can't deliver the victory that we need in the midterms if it's just the MAGA base. This side war is aimed at all the low propensity voters, so-called, the voters who turned out in record numbers for Trump in November. That's who the PSYOP is seeking to demoralize, along with the first-time Trump voters who were Democrats and the independents. We're going to put some effort into neutralizing it right now, this operation. But it starts with you, our listeners. You know the people on each side of this on the internet. Tell everyone you know who supported the president in 2024 not to fall for the oldest globalist trick. Also, if you haven't already, please become a paying member of Promethean Action or donate. We aim to keep exposing this and other operations like it at their source. This has been your Wednesday Brief. Thanks for watching.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at PrometheanAction.com.